Hello students, today we are going to discuss air carrier's liability for passengers' death and loss of property. To start with the introduction, if an airline or its employees are negligent and cause harm to a passenger or property, the airline could be held liable. They are not thought of as insurers of the passenger's safety, but they must treat them with same care as a common carrier. If an aircraft accident results in injuries to people other than passengers, such as those who are hurt on the ground, airlines may be held accountable. The following variables affect liability in aviation accidents: contract, implied or express warranty, discrimination, wrongful expulsion, delays and negligence. Liabilities under both domestic and international legal regimes are involved in the complexity of aviation litigation. The court must choose a choice of law to decide how much damage an injured passenger will receive if international law is not applicable. In aviation litigation, aircraft accidents are important and complicated matters that call for a careful assessment of who is at fault, what kind of liability they are, and how much of it. Determining culpability may be hampered by the parties' differing jurisdictions. Compensation is a crucial matter to address after liability has been established. International laws establish minimum responsibility limitations for the carriage of passengers, goods and luggage in the event of death, injury, damage, delay or loss. These laws also offer a global set of standards and regulations for air travel. Now we will discuss development of law relating to the liability of airlines. The Warsaw Convention, established in 1929, served as the foundation for the development of Montreal Convention in 1999, which represent a notable endeavor to establish a consistent framework for responsibility. However, as a result of ever-changing nature of the aviation sector, it is the legal system and judicial interpretation that play a crucial role in ensuring the attainment of justice. However, due to advancements in the aviation industry and the subsequent rise in the money earned by airlines, it has been determined that maintaining a regime focused solely on the interest of carriers would be perceived as unjust from a public standpoint. The aforementioned consciousness has led to modifications being made to the Warsaw Protocols of 1975. The Montreal Convention of 1999 was established with the aim of harmonizing and modernizing the international air carrier liability regime. Nevertheless, the issue remained unresolved as not all the entities involved in the Warsaw system became participants in the Montreal Convention. The Montreal Convention resulted in the introduction of an additional parallel system, further contributing to the diversification of international air carrier liability law. The aforementioned instruments resulted in a decrease in the available defenses for the carrier while simultaneously expanding the scope of application and responsibility limits in order to better serve the interests of victims. The ratification of the changes to the Warsaw Convention did not achieve a universal acceptance among all the state parties to the convention. Students, India is a signatory to Warsaw Convention, Hague Protocol and Montreal Convention. The Carriage by Air Act of 1972, enacted in India to enforce international standards domestically, encompasses three distinct sets of liability regulations. Students, Section 3, in conjunction with the first schedule, delineates the norms of the Warsaw Convention. Similarly, Section 4, in conjunction with the second schedule, delineates the norms of the Hague Protocol. Furthermore, Section 4A, in conjunction with the third schedule, delineates the norms for the Montreal Convention as they are applicable to international carriage within the jurisdiction of India. The annexure includes three parts, namely Part 1, Part 2 and Part 3, which outline the states that fall within the jurisdiction of the Warsaw Convention, Hague Protocol and Montreal Convention respectively. Section 8 of the Carriage by Air Act confers authority upon the central government to issue notifications for the purpose of extending liability regulations for carriers to domestic carriage either with or without alterations. Now, we will discuss the ascertainment of the airline's liability from the international dimensions. The courts had little trouble outlining the fundamentals of the behaviors expected of carriers in the initial instances that set the bar for highest level of care. The operator is required to supply suitably outfitted aircraft, qualified pilots, appropriate landing zones, comprehensive aircraft maintenance and sufficient infrastructure for the collection and dissemination of meteorological information. Moreover, the obligation to safeguard passengers extend beyond the actual flight. It is necessary to properly evacuate the passengers from the aircraft and direct them away from any rotating propellers that can obstruct the route from the aircraft to the hangar. Injuries brought on by unexpected storms and air turbulence that the carrier could not have predicted are not subject to legal responsibility. It would be irresponsible to avoid addressing the crucial question of whether it was negligent to foresee the danger by characterizing the outcome in the later situation as an assumption of risk. In cases where the courts are considered the predictability of unfavorable weather, they would often include a remark about the novelty of the air travel in their rulings. The evident goal was to draw attention to the carrier's encounters with the unpredictable behavior of the atmosphere. Although this directive is still in use today, its importance has significantly decreased. The types of air disturbances can be considered unexpected should be acknowledged as progressively diminishing in quantity as the carrier's information base grows. Students, it is necessary to demonstrate a real link between the infraction and the mishap. In the event that is this relationship is absent, the infraction has no bearing on the assessment of negligence. The main concern is what kind of risk the legislation covers, because the main objective of the regulation is to increase the safety of all pilots. The Supreme Court of United States in Air France versus Sachs, a case of 1985, held that an accident occurs only if an unexpected or unusual event or happening that is external to the passenger causes a passenger's injury. According to the Supreme Court, an injury is the result of chain of causes. All that is necessary is for the passenger to be able to prove that some link in the chain was unusual or unexpected event that occurred outside of their control. In Marshall versus Western Airlines, a case of 1991, the court determined that despite the airline's need to alert the passengers to the risk of air harm, there was insufficient proof to conclude that plaintiff's injury could have been avoided with a warning prior to takeoff. The impact of the violation in a given instance varies throughout the courts, even in cases where a link between the infringement and the accident is established. A precedent set by the 1935 case of Thomas versus American Airways asserts that negligence alone, in the absence of other evidence, constitutes a breach when it is unreasonable. The other line of authority, which appears to be in the minority, holds that a violation is merely evidence of negligence, which the jury may consider with the other facts in determining whether the carrier has complied with the established standard. Morrison versus Lee Tornio Company of Georgia, a case of 1943, is an example of the issue. In this case, the plaintiff claimed that pilot was negligent as he only held a private pilot's certificate and was therefore unfit to fly the passengers. The pilot may have been fully qualified to operate the aircraft, as the court noted in rejecting this argument. Even if the court used the concept of proximate cause, a thorough examination reveals that the Act claims to reduce the possibility of accidents caused by inexperienced pilots. The lack of a license was wholly irrelevant to the question of negligence, because it does not prove that pilot who was neglected to obtain one is incompetent. The plaintiff in Goodhart versus American Airlines, a case of 1937, presented evidence demonstrating that the aircraft was 50 miles off the track and traveling at an unsafe altitude over a hazardous and unfamiliar area when it crashed. There was no discernible change in the weather along the designated route. The defendant proved that pilot was qualified, the aircraft was equipped and inspected appropriately, and it made no attempt to justify deviating from the prescribed path. The plaintiff claimed in his petition that there was a specific act of negligence that entitled him to go to trial, and the court found that his evidence seemed to support this claim in the absence of a suitable explanation for the deviation. Given the circumstances and ruling, it would seem that the defendant's evidence of the highest care taken in getting the aircraft ready for takeoff would be inadmissible if the plaintiff's allegations were validated, as careful preparation does not negate a pilot's negligence. The court believed that since the recommended course was the safest option, any deviation from it was less safe. If this variation was significant enough, as it was in this instance, it would be enough to determine culpability without having access to the information that would have preceded the collision. Students, the jury in Allison versus Standard Airlines of 1933 was entrusted with the finding that an air common carrier is bound to exercise the highest degree of practical care and diligence and is liable for all matters against which human prudence and foresight might guard, which is a solid summary of the current responsibility. Now, we will discuss the liability norms pertaining to death or injury. Students, air carriers bear legal responsibility for any fatalities or injuries incurred by the passenger during air transportation as stipulated in the three schedules. The first and the second schedules pertain to incidents involving death, wounding and bodily harm, but the third schedule exclusively addresses cases involving death and bodily injury. There exist ongoing arguments surrounding the meaning of the term bodily injury, particularly with regard to the inclusion of psychological injury within its scope. In the majority of the states, there is a general consensus that the provision of compensation solely for the psychological harm is not typically recognized. However, in order for psychological injury to be eligible for compensation, it must be a direct result of physical injury. The burden of proof lies with the victim to establish a causal link between the accident occurring abroad, the aircraft or during the process of embarking or disembarking and the resulting harm. Therefore, it is insufficient to just provide evidence of death or injury. Rather, the plaintiff must substantiate the occurrence of an accident which is defined as an unforeseen incident that results in harm. Furthermore, it is imperative to ascertain whether the accident in issue took place aboard the aircraft itself or during the process of boarding or disembarking. These distinct inquiries must be addressed individually for each specific situation. The limits of liabilities imposed on carriers vary throughout the three schedules. According to the first schedule, there exists a prescribed upper limit for liability pertaining to passenger fatalities and injuries, which has been set at the rate of 1,25,000 francs. Nevertheless, it is possible for the passenger and the carrier to enter into a distinct contractual agreement. I am repeating again, distinct contractual agreement with the intention of augmenting the established limit. Also, if the carrier does something intentionally wrong or breaks something that is equivalent to doing something intentionally wrong and causes harm, the limitation of liability is lifted, leaving the carrier fully responsible. Now, the second schedule entails an augmentation in the threshold of accountability for passenger fatalities or harm, elevating it to 2,50,000 francs. Just with the first schedule, the limit has the potential to be augmented by the execution of a specialized contract. In the event that a carrier deliberately engages in an act or omission that leads to harm or acts recklessly with the awareness that damage is likely to occur, the carrier's liability limit would be exceeded if the damage is a direct consequence of the act or omission. The regulation regarding raising of the responsibility limit is equally applicable to both the first and the second schedules, provided that the servants or agents of the carrier are within the scope of the provision. Now, coming to the third schedule. The third schedule presents an alternative framework for the responsibility that has two distinct levels. According to the first tier, the carrier bears the strict liability for damages up to a maximum of 1 lakh SDR, that is special drawing rights. The defendant is precluded from invoking any defenses or limitations of liability with the exception of the defense of contributory negligence on the part of the plaintiff. According to the second layer, the carrier assumes the obligations above 1 lakh SDRs based on the fault liability. In order to absolve themselves of obligation in the second tier, the carrier must demonstrate either the lack of negligence or any other unlawful act or omission on their part to establish that the damages incurred are exclusively attributable to the carelessness or other wrongful act or omission of a third party. Students, the implementation of preventive measures or the potential inability to implement such measures by the carriers as outlined in the third schedule may result in the prevention of harm or the inability to do so in cases of passengers' fatality or injury. This is a very important clause because it changes the system of liability from one based on fault as explained in the first and second schedules to the one based on strict liability, with only one exception being the victim's level of contributory negligence as explained in the third schedule. Students, the Warsaw Convention outlines 4 distinct jurisdictions for plaintiffs seeking monetary restitution. These jurisdictions include the carrier's customary residence, major place of business, contracting party's place of business and the point of destination. The third schedule introduces a new jurisdiction, the plaintiff's principal and permanent home. The fifth schedule prioritizes victims' interest by allowing them to choose the jurisdiction that offers the most benefit within their state. Students, however, this could lead to discriminatory treatment based on the state's ratification of the international instrument. Now, we will discuss the judicial overview in India. The crucial question regarding the Carriage by Air Act's jurisdiction is whether the consumer forums can be considered competent courts under the Act to decide such claims. The inquiry pertains to the potential intersection between the Consumer Protection Act and the Carriage by Air Act. The issue at hand was subject to dispute in numerous instances, ultimately culminating in the adjudication of the Supreme Court in the case of Trans-Mediterranean Airways versus Universal Exports and another. In its ruling, the Supreme Court affirmed that Section 3 of Consumer Protection Act provides a supplementary recourse for service inadequacies, which does not undermine any other legal remedy available under different statutes. Therefore, the Consumer Forum serves as the legally authorized tribunal under the Carriage by the Air Act. Nonetheless, the aforementioned reasoning is rendered inapplicable in the event of passenger fatalities resulting from aviation accidents as stipulated in Section 5 of the Carriage by Air Act. Section 5 of the aforementioned legislation serves the purpose of absolving the carrier from any obligation pertaining to death as stipulated in the Fatal Accidents Act of 1855 as well as any other prevailing enactments or legal principles in operation in India, with the exception of 3 schedules outlined in the Carriage by Air Act. Therefore, the consumer forums lack the jurisdiction to handle disputes pertaining to passenger fatalities. Bhagwan Das B. Ramchandani, a plaintiff in Bhagwan Das B. Ramchandani versus British Airways, was involved in a legal case involving a shipment of perishable produce from Mumbai, India to Canada, with a transit stop in London, United Kingdom. The shipment was damaged and destroyed during transit, leading to the appellant's claim. The respondent argued that litigation should be barred due to the application of limitation period. The trial court determined that the lawsuit was not subject to the statute of limitations, but the High Court invalidated the trial court's order, resulting in the claim being time barred. The court ruled that Rule 30 subclause 2 does not allow for the exclusion of time periods when calculating the 2-year duration, maintaining the consistency and serving the objectives of the convention. In case of Interglobe Aviation Limited versus N. Sachidanand, a 2011 case, the Supreme Court, in accordance with the Carriage by Air Act of 1972, determined that passengers travelling on a low-cost carriers should receive equal care and attention as those on full-service carriers. The court emphasized that there should be no compromise in maintaining the minimum standards of safety, security and efficiency. In Trans-Mediterranean versus Universal Exports, a case of 2004, Trans-Mediterranean faced a directive from the National Consumer Disputes Redressal Commission ordering them to pay $71,615 along with the interest until fully realized. The Commission imposed costs for their failure to provide satisfactory service. The National Commission's jurisdiction under the Consumer Protection Act to address and adjudicate claim for service deficiencies by carriers was challenged in this case. The Supreme Court determined that protection provided under Consumer Protection Act is supplementary to other statutes and the exercise of jurisdiction was in compliance with the international law as outlined in Rule 29 of the second schedule through the Carriage by Air Act and Warsaw Convention. Students, the case of Kandi Malan Bharti Devi and others versus the General Insurance Corporation of India of 1998 involved a legal dispute as to whether the compensation awarded under the Carriage by Air Act should take into account the benefits received from personal accident insurance policy or not. In its response, the court determined that compensation provided under Rule 22 subclause 1 is the minimum amount of compensation applicable in the event of death, unless a higher maximum has been established by a particular agreement between the carrier and the passenger. Therefore, the court did not consider any external factors when calculating the compensation for death. Instead, it relied on the reasoning that the death of a passenger, regardless of their status, would lead to maximum amount of compensation as stipulated in Rule 22 subclause 1. The National Aviation Company of India Limited and Airport Authority of India were involved in the case of Airport Authority of India versus Ushaben Shirish Bhai Shah of 2009, where the pilots of Air India landed recklessly despite suboptimal visibility conditions at Ahmedabad Airport. The Gujarat High Court granted the plaintiff's request to remove the carrier's responsibility limited as outlined in the second schedule, resulting in the damages. The court ordered a compensation of Rs 7.53 lakhs considering the victim's income in 1988 and other external considerations. Students, now we come to the conclusion of this discussion. Thus, it can be safely appended that the legislatures and the courts focused primarily on establishing an airline's culpability for accidents to people and property on the ground during the early years of flying. With regard to these injuries, the aircraft was considered as a dangerous instrument and the pilot was responsible for any harm brought about by their flights. This activity virtually stopped when mechanical level comments were sufficient to support using an aeroplane to carry this extremely risky concept of passengers, and aeroplane operators were held to the same liability and care standards as ground carriers with the interacting with passengers. The passenger's assumption of risk is often used as a defense against the carrier liability. However, judiciary worldwide is recognizing the liability of airlines, and the airlines are providing compensation in case of injury and loss of property. Kerala High Court ordered the payment of compensation for victims of Karipur plane crash, with the National Aviation Company Limited offering Rs 1.51 crores. The incident that occurred at Kozhikode Airport involving an aircraft operated by Air India Express led to the unfortunate loss of 19 lives and caused more than 130 individuals to sustain injuries. Airlines bear the responsibility of providing compensation in cases of flight cancellations, delays and loss of baggage as well. In the event of passengers' demise or physical harm, they are eligible to receive a maximum compensation of 1,13,100 SDRs. The precise quantity is contingent upon the variables such as age, level of education, employment status and degree of dependency. This brings us to the end of today's lecture. Thank you very much for the patience listening.